Yo, what is good, high performers? High performance mentor Desi right here. Also, your podcast host, and just all the wonderful things that I am. And for you all, like again, with season 5 underway, I am so damn thankful. On Friday, I'm actually going to do a solo episode where I discuss my hero's journey. I figured it was the best way to kick off season 5 because 5 is my favorite number, and as your podcast host, I want to make sure that as we are tapping into the lives of high performers in our Friday Heroes Journey episodes, that I'm also sharing a bit of my journey too. Cause I think that's kind of where, like, especially as listeners, you get and kind of root for them. And in the same way, I'm rooting for all of you, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so, welcome to season 5. Welcome to our first installment of our Mentorship Monday. you know, this past the end of season 4, we did a clip show. So if you have not had a chance to go back, please make sure that you do because it's kind of the all-star episodes of season 4 and some of my favorite conversations. And so if you have not gotten to do that, please go do that right now. So as we kick off season 5 with our Mentorship Monday, one of the things, and this comes from Jim Quick, and I've mentioned this so many times, but it's such a determining factor behind your success. Jim Quick from the Quick Brain podcast always mentions, like, hey, you're a product of the 5 most people that you hang out with, right? And so I figured this would be a good opportunity for what I like to refer to as the social 5, right? Really tapping into your environment because one of the most powerful drivers of creating habits that are not only just routine, but high reward habits and things that are pushing you towards a desired outcome is absolutely going to be your social environment, right? And so I think this is kind of where, as humans, this is kind of how I view behavior oftentimes. We're social creatures, whether it's, either you're an extrovert or introvert or some of the other personality types, you're going to want to have healthy connection with people. And I think we all really desire that because in all of our ways, we want to feel accepted, we want to feel loved, we want to feel heard, and all of that makes sense. And so when we look at your social circles, it's going to influence your behavior and your values surrounding that behavior. One of the my favorite things to think about, and literally when I'm coaching a lot of my one-to-one and group coaching clients, is helping them to examine their social circle and how it influences them currently. I just got done with a mentorship call with one of our brand new people, and they were talking about their social environment at home. They were talking about how it's been years since they actually dedicated time to having conversations with their significant other and also their children. And one of the things that he was talking about was that it's gotten so far beyond having the conversation that it's kind of taboo to talk about going for a walk together because there's just a lot of shame that comes up. And so when we look at social influence or social circles in this case, or our social 5, and it influencing your values surrounding those behaviors, it's always best, just like as you kind of tap into past episodes, it's always best to really see yourself within a new identity and also to label and call out aspects of yourself and your values and how you spend your time that aren't adhering to the type of outcomes that you desire. Okay. And so when we look at your social 5, it's going to set your expectation with what is normal. One of my favorite quotes always talks about, like, hey, if you hang around 4 millionaires, you're going to be the 5th. So if you also kind of like putting it down towards our habits, if you hang out with 4 gym goers, you're going to become the 5th, right? If you hang out with 4 people who really emphasize their mental health, who really wants to desire to have healthy human connection and desire self-love, you're going to become the 5th. And that's kind of how that works, just within not only habit formation, but also within creating a new identity. Because I find, especially in the first 60 days of someone stepping into our programs, it's a lot of unlearning. And it's a lot of having conversations surrounding, the things that are going on at home and setting down and having an intention. Because we could be thinking on our end, like just let's just kind of put ourselves in our own body right now within our social circles, whether this is at home or at work, we might have goals that we want to talk about. We might have things that we desire, but it's a vulnerable act to reach out to others and say, hey, would someone want to go on this journey with me? Because the cool thing about this is you can be the driving force behind it. You can be the person that leads the charge, if you will. And the cool thing that I find too, especially locally, is like there's a huge staple with organizations seeing that it's not just about numbers, it's not just about hitting certain metrics, but it's about developing the person. No, there's a local business right now that, shout out to this team that they do goal setting, each and every week, and they have meetings that are looking at like, hey, how do we help to develop you as a person? Because I think when we look at something that's centered person first and developing all the holistic aspects of them, then the whole team is going to thrive because of that. And that's one thing that I find in the first 60 days of helping these high performers is making sure that we're looking at their environment and their social circles, and they are putting in what they need to put in order to get the type of outcome that they need. And so here's kind of the big takeaways behind your social environment. And this is why this is really imperative. But the first takeaway that we need to look at is we got to have the conversation now, and we got to have it often. Whether that is with your significant other or with your family members or best friends or coworkers, like whatever that is, if there's something that you're really passionate about and a change that you really want to make, you're going to have to get your social five around you. You're going to have to have these conversations. And for some of us, and this is something too that I find, a lot of the high performers in our program right now are married individuals. And the thing that I always tell them is like, hey, I need you to have these conversations right now about some of the habits that you're really interested in changing. Because one, we need to make sure that your social five, in this case, the household is surrounding you, is saying like, okay, if we're going to have an intention to eat better, if we're going to have an intention to sit down and have breakfast together, or to go on that walk together, or possibly to engage in some family time, everyone needs to be on the same page. I don't know about you, especially in my marriage, like anytime that I've assumed something, like I've completely made an ass out of myself, right? What is the term to assume is to make an ass out of you and me? It's kind of relative to what actually happens when you don't actually engage in these conversations. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to have a conversation about getting some clarity around these goals, about getting some clarity with like why you're doing what you're doing. The same individual that I was talking about really, really wanted to make a change for his family and to lead a new legacy. To me, that resonates with me. It's the whole reason why I started everything that I start, because it's like, you know what? I want to show up as a more authentic and healthy individual, all aspects, mental, physical, emotional, whatever that is. I want to make sure that I'm showing up the best version of myself for my daughter, for my wife, and for future kids. And then also too for like my extended family. I want to make sure that I continue my path so that others can follow, or they can be my social five. Okay. And so we need to have the conversation often, or rather we need to have it now, and we need to have the conversation often. And it doesn't have to be crazy. It just has to be sitting down with an intention to say, hey, I joined this new program, or hey, I joined this new club. I really need some guidance or some help with going on these walks together. Or hey, I would love to set up some time, maybe weekly or every other week, for us to talk about what's going on. Because especially in the first 60 days, I will tell a lot of our high performers, like, hey, we need to either have your significant other on calls, or you need to be having conversations, because you're going to find at some point that as you're continuing this evolution, stepping into days 90 and above, that the other person in your home, if the conversations aren't being had and it's just about you, the other person's either going to stay stagnant, and there's going to come some strife that's going to come with that. They're not going to maybe have the language centers to be like, hey, you went down this journey, and I don't feel included. And oftentimes that's going to come out as a little bit of jealousy. That might come out as some disconnection. I mean, there was a long time ago, a high performer was telling me that oftentimes they'll be working out and their significant other is just kind of watching them. And this high performer is like, I'm not really sure if they're like rooting me on or just glaring at me, but that's what's going on. But here's the fact of what happens here. If you're not said, and so having the conversation now is really going to help. And so our second takeaway here, I'm not even going to call it a shameless plug. I'm going to call it a plug because I deeply believe in this community. But the key step is to join a group where your desired behavior is the norm, right? So if you want to be a gym goer, right? If you hang out with 4 gym goers, you're going to become the 5th. And so it's the same thing here. And I'm going to throw a plug in here. If you're looking to become a high performer, you need to surround yourself with high performing people. Again, there's different levels of this. There are people who are extreme high performers that know what they need, that have engaged in mentorship and have gotten to where they are today. And there's different varying levels of people that know what they want, but they may not have a path or may not be clear on how to get there. But this is where the High Performance Club, our Facebook group, is such a huge commodity, because these are people who either desire to become high performers or currently are and are just continuing the fight. And so our two takeaways there again is to have the convo, have the conversation about your goals, have the conversation about your intention, and to have them often to get your social five around you in order to be successful. And the next one is, if you don't have that, then you need to join a group or need to join a different social five. And that's where I think I see a lot of maturation. I see a lot of evolution with people being successful, because we all have had accountability partners. For those of us who, again, I'm going to keep using the gym reference here, for those of us who wanted to get into the gym or to try something new, it's kind of nice to have a small little social fiber, a community for when the days you don't show up, right? Or you just get excited to see those people. It's kind of the same thing here, because when you're able to surround yourself with like-minded people, there's a lot that can happen here. And this is where I find it's just really influential to surround yourself with those types of people so that they can push you. All right. So what now? As always, you kind of know that I have homework with each and every one. Welcome again to season 5. So as you watch or listen, I want you to take a screenshot of this episode, because again, it's about the application. We all have moments where we Google things and we learn and we buy courses or we buy books, self-help books, and we really don't do anything with them because there is no application. So this is part of our application process. So I want you to, as you watch or listen, take a screenshot of this episode. Go ahead and tag me at @𝐷esiaBeta, at @IMadeItPod if you're on IG. Wherever you are on your socials, TikTok, it doesn't matter. So tag me, and I just want you to comment on one thing that you're going to be working on this week. Okay. I want you to, running through this system, right? Your social five. I just want you to comment on something that you can do to expand on your social five, to improve on it, or maybe just to be aware. Because oftentimes the best thing that you can do for yourself is to raise your hand and say, like, you know what, my social five is not working for me right now. So I'm going to make sure that I have a conversation with my husband or my wife, or I have a conversation with my mentor. Like I really want to make sure that I'm clear on what I'm doing here. So it's about the application. Again, people, welcome to season 5. I'm totally excited to be able to continue this path with you all. And a special shout out too, and I'm going to do this in the next episode. We got some abroad listeners, so I love seeing it. Thank you guys so much for the support. Welcome to season 5. Let's get it.